All right, we are on air. It is February 4th. Happy new month, everyone. We're going to do a quick check-in today on development tasks and talk about what's going on in Drupal community, and just because I'm interested in that today. we'll see how things are going. General announcements. As you know, if you make a donation to the Backdrop Foundation, you will get a Dragon t-shirt or hoodie for various different amounts. We have had a couple people ask if they can make donations without accepting gifts in return. You definitely can. There is just a donate button on the top of the contribute page. So if you don't want to donate $25, if you only want to donate $5, you can do that. Or if you wanted to donate $5 million, that's also fine. If you want a t-shirt, you can donate $25 and we'll send you a thank you gift, or $50 if you want a hoodie. So that's an option. We do have free PHP Storm licenses for contributed developers for Backdrop. So if you are maintaining a module theme or layout and want to use PHP Storm, send an email to info@backdropcms.org and we will send out a link that will help you get a license key. And then we finally have an update from the PMC this week, and Nate's not here. He's at a Lullabot developer retreat this weekend, so he's not going to participate. But the big news is that we've added a new PMC member, and that's Mike McCaffrey. So Mike, welcome to the PMC. We are starting to look at growing all of our teams. We spent the last year working like crazy on all of our code. And this year what we're starting to do is look at putting new people on the PMC, putting new people in as core committers, delegating more resources around working on backdropcms.org, approving contrib maintainers, like all of the kind of busy work that we have been doing for the last few years. We're trying to start spreading out over a much larger group of people. And that's because we've been getting a whole bunch more interest in Backdrop, which is great, but that means that we need to kind of grow our kind of main teams to be able to support the growth that we're hoping to be getting any day now in the contrib group. So far things are looking really good, and we'll get more to that on community growth section. But Mike, is there anything that you want to say as being part of the team now?
Go team!
Yay!
Hey.
So for those of you who don't know, I'm sure everyone here already knows, Mike was actually responsible for naming Backdrop back before we knew Backdrop was a real thing. It was just kind of like we were grumpy about Drupal, and we had a conversation, and we're like, we should totally do this. And then 6 months later, we decided, well, Nate kind of decided that it actually had to happen, and we had a bunch of talking about it, and we spent a period of time not knowing anything about what its name should be. And he came back to the idea of Backdrop and was like, that was just such a good name. And so in the very early days, we reached out to Mike, and we're like, guess what? This thing is totally happening. And Mike's like, but that was for Drupal 6 fork, not a Drupal 7 fork. But we somehow convinced him to stick around, and he's still here, and he's been doing a lot of great work for the community, especially in the last release. He helped steer us in a direction that neither Nate or I had originally anticipated, and that's kind of what we want the community to do in general, is like make good suggestions and do good arguments and tell us when we're wrong. So thanks, Mike, for sticking up for what you believed in and steering us in the right direction.
I am happy to tell you that you're wrong whenever I find an opportunity.
Yes! Everybody else, please feel free to do that as well. So that's super exciting, and we do have a couple of other ideas about people we have in mind for things. So keep your ears open for that. We'll keep working on expanding those teams. All right, so Nate's not here to do the community growth section. So this morning I got to go through and count all of the things, which is pretty exciting. I haven't done that in a while. And I was so surprised because in our last meeting, there was kind of a lull where it's like, oh, nobody's done anything new this week. But this week, everybody was apparently on fire. We have 10 new contributed modules for Backdrop. And I think a bunch of those were ones that were kind of, sitting around in various contrib repositories, but not actually moved into the Backdrop contrib group. And we had a whole bunch of people who are like, I want to work on these. We have people collaborating on maintainership. Everything's getting moved into contrib, which is fantastic. So 10 new contrib projects in the last week. I can't even believe how amazing that is. So thank you, everybody who's been working on that. 4 of those projects also have official releases, so people are not just throwing code around, but they're actually working on it and getting it production ready. And those releases are now on backdropcms.org. And we also have not just those new modules, but there were 4 other modules that have new releases as well. So we've got 8 new releases on backdropcms.org this week, so that's fantastic. I went through the issue queue for contrib maintainer applications because there seem to be two different types of issues that we're tracking in the Backdrop contrib queue. Some of them are maintainer applications, but there's also a bunch of other people posting about modules they're thinking about porting or getting recommendations on how to port modules or even requests on how to port modules. So I went through and tagged all the issues with one or the other, and I realized that we currently have 8 pending applications for people who are trying to become part of contrib, which is a lot more than I thought were in there. But they're often sometimes lumped in with like, I'm going to port this module, by the way, can I be a maintainer? And so I've been looking at them thinking it was like a module port issue, but it's actually both. So I was like, oh, I read all these issues, and there's all these people in here we should contact. So that's pretty exciting. And then I also, this doesn't have anything to do with community growth, but I was thinking, just to throw this out there, that what we could do, because we've got a bunch of people who aren't necessarily developers who want particular modules, like they had the modules on the Drupal site and they're not ready for Backdrop. I was going to see how you guys felt about using that queue as like a place to say, please port X module, and we could even set up some kind of like a bounty program so that if somebody's like, I have a budget, I've got $500, these are the 8 modules I need, I'm going to divide the $500 between the 8 modules, let me know if you can work on any or all of them, and then we could have a place for developers to just kind of swoop in and be like, sure, I'll do that this weekend, and kind of help match people with, you know, work that needs to be done and people who can do the work. So I thought, since we were kind of using that queue for module ports already, that might be a good place to throw that. Nobody has any objections. Okay, so I'll try and figure out how some kind of a bounty thing would actually work, but for now we'll just put like requests and collaboration in there. Okay, so on backdropcms.org, we have allowed people to log in and create user accounts, which is fantastic. Since last week, we've had 9 new people create accounts, which is good. Oh, sorry, Andy, I think you were asking where the issue queue is. It's GitHub backdrop-ops/contrib. So the issue queue for the contrib applications is also the one we're using for module ports. Apologize for the banging. Apparently there's a package outside my door. Anyway. Okay, so for user accounts, we have 9 new users since last week, which I think is pretty good. We also have a bunch of new features coming for new users. We've got a whole bunch of people who are logging in and using the website, which we haven't had before, and so we're also getting a whole bunch of feedback on the website. So in the last week, I tried to go through the GitHub issue queue for backdropcms.org and pick off some low-hanging fruit on issues over there. We've got some, feedback issues as well as some issues we've never completed. I made some changes to project module to help pull in some of the information we needed on projects, and so hopefully we'll be able to start kind of moving that forward in terms of finishing tasks that had already been started. And then all of our new users will be happy with what's going on over there. All right, infrastructure. So speaking of updating backdropcms.org, we do have issues with project module. I said I was doing some work on that this week. I also filed a pull request last week for fixing Travis reporting so that we can not count Travis installs in our usage statistics. We've got a pull request for that. I think that's ready-ish. I'll probably need to have another review on it. And then we want to start tracking additional things other than just what projects are being used, but additional information about those projects, like which core modules are on and off, which core themes or which core layouts are you using? Are you using color module? Just a bunch of stuff, because in the issue queue, we're coming up with these issues like, wait, nobody uses that, but we don't actually know if nobody uses that. So it'd be great to get some counts. Like maybe there are a whole bunch of people with blogs running Bartik, and we need to preserve these things. And right now, without any data on who's using it, who's not, we're just sort of forced to preserve everything. So we'll hopefully get those changes in too. We also have some issues about what we're going to do with these usage numbers. Like we've got some designs for the module themes and layouts pages that lets you display them, but there's things that aren't module themes and layouts that we're now going to have usage numbers for. So where do we put those? Is this like an admin thing? Do we have like a random page that's like stuff we're counting that we can just expose to the general public? So I have to do a little kind of information architecture on when we collect this information, where does it live in the system? Build the place for it to live, build a place for people to see it, that sort of thing as well. But yeah, so lots of work to do on update checking if you're interested in that. Those issues are numbered 99, and if you like charting, also 98. We'll add spark lines and pretty stuff like there's on Drupal network. Drush for Backdrop, exciting news going on over there. Jeff, you've been doing such an amazing job of adding features to Drush. So I was like, okay, I'm going to test this thing, and I built it, and nothing worked. And then he's like, actually, the problem was you. And I fixed it. I was like, you're right, everything is working. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, logged into my Backdrop site. I was like, Drush, download modules, and they appeared. And I was like, what? So the Drush DL command is working great. I even got Drush working specifically for my Backdrop site, separately for my Drupal 7 sites. We've got different versions going. And I saw new pull requests coming in for like being able to choose specific versions of specific modules. So I know you've been doing a ton of work on that. I just wanted to say thank you for getting that going. I've got a couple of other issues in the queue that are like, please add these features that I'm super excited to get and help with if you can point me in the right direction. So that would be pretty cool. Oh yeah, layouts and themes. Man, install layouts. Okay, sorry, I'm so excited. So if anyone else has any requests about things that you guys do with Drush, the issue queue is now on the project in the contrib repo, backdrop-contrib/Drush. So definitely feel free to participate there. GitHub automation is something that we would love to do. There's a lot of stuff going on GitHub that requires manual intervention, and GitHub is weird about its permissions, and sometimes people don't have permission to do the things that we would like to have done. But if we could automate it, our robot could have whatever permissions we wanted to. So there's a tag in the Backdrop issue queue for GitHub automation. Well, if we have anyone who's super experienced in playing with GitHub or wants to learn how, that might be a good place to contribute. There's kind of been a long-standing list of things we think we could automate if only we had the time to automate them.
Hey, Jen?
Yes?
Can you look into the possibility of having the same tags on the contrib repo as in the Backdrop core repo, or maybe just
I was wondering about that. Yeah, because I think like every contrib repo has to like define its own tags, which is a huge pain. And if there's a way we could just like set the defaults, even to just like pull from something else like core, I think that would save people a bunch of time. I noticed that I was trying to like mark a contrib issue RTBC, and then I was like, this tag isn't there. Yeah, okay, I'll look in that. And if anyone else knows anything about default tags for organizations, let me know. I'm definitely not a GitHub expert. Org tags. Okay, we'll try and figure that out. That would also be a huge help for our entire contrib community. All right, so backdropcms.org, things on our to-do list. Single sign-on with GitHub, so anyone who already has a GitHub account doesn't need to create one on Backdrop. I think would be great. A showcase for websites built with Backdrop, so that if you're trying to sell Backdrop to your client and they go, show me a site using it, you actually have a place to go, which would be great. A service provider or contractor listing. I've had a bunch of people email me and say, help find me a Backdrop developer, and I wish I could just point them at a page and be like, contact all of these people and they'll help you. An event calendar, so we can get off of Google Calendar, or at least use both. So anyone can submit an event and it would appear in an upcoming events listing. And a jobs board has worked really well for Drupal in terms of hiring people with skills for being a person with skills and getting hired. So that's kind of our long-term plan there. As I said earlier, what we're working on right now are kind of follow-up issues for a bunch of the stuff that we've already gotten done, trying to make it a little better, particularly around, we have all these modules and themes and layouts being created. Let's help people find them. We have designs for a modules page. We have designs for a themes page, too, that need to be implemented. We've had a couple of pieces of feedback lately saying, this might work for a modules listing, but it doesn't work for themes or layouts. And we're like, we know, we'll get to it. So that might be a good task for somebody if you want to take a look at the themes page and try and make that pretty. We also have a new blog section. There's some follow-up issues there that I think are just pending design review, which we'll hope to have done by the end of this month. It's fine as it is. It's not beautiful, but it's functional, which is kind of how we roll here. For first build it, then make it pretty. So speaking of blog news and announcements, originally we had on our blog schedule that Nate was going to do a performance write-up of Backdrop specifically on PHP 7 and talk about how we have PHP 7 support, but he's been out all week at this retreat and hasn't had time to get his benchmarks done. But fortunately, Graham has been working on a blog post for Backdrop on theme development, and he's putting that on backdropcms.org right now, and that'll go up tomorrow. And then we're going to push Nate's article to next Friday so that he has time to get his benchmarks all done and ready for that. I know, Mike, you have a blog you want to write. There's a whole bunch of other people who've got blog posts in the queue. If you have a timeline, we can put you on, like, I can't do it for 3 weeks or whatever it is. We can schedule that. If you don't, just write it whenever, and we'll just put you in the next week that's available. So that goes for everyone. If you have something you want to work on, just write it whenever you can, and we'll get it in whenever you're done. Webinars. We are trying to do a couple of webinars on Backdrop since those are pretty successful for Drupal. There's a big company in India that's doing a series of Drupal webinars all the time, and they reached out to us and they asked us to do one webinar now, and then we're going to try and do another one in May after Backdrop 1.4 comes out. This month's is specifically going to be on Backdrop 1.3, and then a deep dive on layout stuff, since there's a bunch of cool layout stuff in the latest version. So Nate's going to be giving that one, and then we'll see where we are for 1.4. We'll do another one there. So especially because layouts is something that's really different than is currently in Drupal, I think it would be good to show a Drupal audience something they haven't seen before. So that'll be fun. Both of our podcasts are up. Last week during this meeting, the Drupal Easy podcast wasn't out yet. It is now out. So if you want to listen to Nate and I talk about Backdrop 1.3, you can hear it both on Lullabot's podcast and on the Drupal Easy podcast. I was actually impressed that there were not a lot of overlap questions between the two. I mean, the general theme is the same, like, yay, we have a new version out. But both of the interviews had a very different style and pretty good questions that were unique. So if you've heard one, don't think you need to skip the other because they seem pretty different. All right, we do have a bunch of other marketing tasks in the backdropcms.org issue queue. There's a tag for marketing. There's a bunch of stuff in there that doesn't really require any work on Backdrop or backdropcms.org. There's stuff like, we need pages on Wikipedia. So if you love editing Wikipedia pages, we have a task for you. Yeah, so I started trying to create those, and I realized there's this tangled web of, like, first Backdrop needs a page, and then you can list Backdrop as like a PHP CMS and link to it. But then I got distracted by something else and never actually got it done. So I put a couple of links in there, pages where I think Backdrop should appear, and some links to source information in the issue queue that might be useful. So if that sounds like it floats your boat, we would love to get stuff like that done. There's a bunch of other stuff in that tag too if you are a marketing person and want to help out. All right, let's talk about Backdrop. So Backdrop, next bug fix version is 1.3.3. Drupal had a new release this week, so we created an issue. It's issue number 1600 of all of the cross ports that we need to pull over from the latest version of Drupal. There's a couple of usability improvements in there, a couple of performance improvements. Doesn't look like there is too much that's super significant. Obviously, it wasn't a security release, it was just a regular release. But it would be good to make sure we're up to date on those. So I targeted that for 1.3.3. We don't have anything else that's super pressing for that release, so I think if we can get those in, that might be a good cutover point for that. But we'll see. If something else comes up, we can get that in too. And then 1.4.0, which is scheduled for May 15th. We've got a kind of a laundry list of things we want to include. First and foremost, I think, is going to be doing some of our bug fixing and improvements of the rich text editor. This was something that Nate noticed he was trying to write his blog post for 1.3.0, and he ran into a couple of bugs with the editor, and he's like, I hate this thing. And I was just like, we need to fix that if this is something that we can't even use ourselves. So we created a couple of issues around using the editor. We've got a couple of people creating other issues around that. We're going to try and make sure all of the biggest problems with that get documented, and as they get fixed, we can put them in whenever. But I wanted to put this in here as something where, by 1.4, we want to not have that horrible experience of using a rich text editor, which is, you know, common. Most rich text editors aren't great to use, but it will be great if we could make ours great to use. So there's kind of a big pain point there that I think we should aim to have cleaned up. On our feature list, we also want to add something like references module or entity reference. I don't know that anyone's been doing any work on that lately, but we have a plan, I think. Mike, I know you're doing some work on it.
I've done some work on it. I'll do more work on it.
Yeah, I think we've had a ton of flurry around the last release, and now everyone's going to take in a breather. But and a whole bunch of stuff going on in Contrib, which is good. But I think we have a plan for references module. We also have kind of a plan for redirect module. I don't think it's as simple as take redirect from Contrib and put it in core. We want to do a little tighter integration with Path. Now that we've got Path Auto in core, we wanted to add the UI for specifying which redirect is or which path is the canonical source, as opposed to right now I don't think that's an option. I think you have to specify the one on the node or something like that. So we have some ideas around how to make some tighter integration and a couple of improvements to redirect as that goes into core. There might also be some removals of edge case features that would then go into a Contrib module that you could install after 1.42, but we'll get into the weeds on that later. And then the two big things that are going to require a lot of thought and a lot of work for 1.4 are creating a new front-end theme and adding a new set of layouts. And I think those two will kind of go hand in hand as we try and figure out how our CSS will be organized. Like, do we want to choose some system like Bootstrap where there is a Bootstrap grid system we could use for layouts, and then a Bootstrap, you know, style system you could use for look and feel, and try to think about how we're going to organize our code, how we're going to clean up or not the code that's already in the three layouts that are already there without trying not to break anything for anyone that's already running those three core layouts. If we're going to provide an upgrade path from core layouts that are there today to new layouts that are there in the future, or if we're just going to leave them and let them run as they are. So we've got some kind of careful thinking to do about how we're going to get people from sites that are running now to what'll be in 1.4. But I think that if we can get a good solid set of layouts in 1.4, and if we can get a really nice looking blank slate theme, that'll go a long way for getting backdrop adoption where people can just use it right out of the box. You don't have to worry about building a custom theme or writing your own layouts. I know last week we had kind of a talk about what our requirements would be for that front-end theme. I don't know if anyone has had any chance to do any more thinking on that. I know I haven't, but definitely participate in that issue if you have strong feelings about something we need to consider for that front-end theme. Same thing goes for layouts. Like, we need to start trying to figure out how all that stuff will be organized. All right, so there is a tag in the GitHub issue queue for 1.4.0. There are a couple of things that got bumped from the 1.3 release that have also ended up in that 1.4 tag. Some of them have gotten in already. They went in, they were considered bugs and went in the first bug fix for 1.3. There's a couple other things that we would love to see get done for 1.4 as well. And they're all tagged in that milestone. A couple of those are Project Browser, which is going to allow people to install modules, themes, and layouts directly from their Backdrop site. It is technically ready, but needs kind of a user interface cleanup to integrate it more closely with pages that already exist for Backdrop. And Field UI rewrite, which is going to be really difficult, just to try and get everything written in a way that makes more sense to people to be able to add fields on entities. There's a big issue for that, issue 799, that we've been working on for a long time. Wes has done a lot of work into researching and wireframing and throwing up examples of ways that could work. A lot of the things he's working on are improvements that we could put into the field UI we have now. Some of them are going to require just, starting over. So I'd love to see getting some progress on that. It'll definitely improve our user experience if we can clean up the whole process of adding fields. There are a whole bunch of other user experience issues on GitHub, and rather than having an official tag or milestone for them, they are indicated by UX and square brackets at the beginning of the title. Depending on the scope of the user experience improvement, that's usually something we can put in any time. If it's adding documentation or changing labels or reorganizing things, usually we can squeeze that in. If it's rewriting an entire UI, like Fields UI or Views UI, that's something that probably will have to wait for a minor release. Developer experience issues are kind of along the same line as user experience issues, where they don't have a tag, but we are identifying them by DX and square brackets in the title. And that's kind of, that applies to if you're a front-end developer and you're finding weird problems in the theme system, document them so we can fix them. Same thing if you're writing modules. If you find some code pattern that's funny or a function you don't understand or something that's completely unintuitive, document that. A lot of those changes might have to wait till Backdrop 2 because they would require an API change to fix, but sometimes we can add a wrapper function or add a backwards compatibility layer around something and it'll get fixed right away. So definitely help us make Backdrop easier for new people to learn and existing people to work with. Let's see, Andy had a comment. Mike mentioned the sub-theme stuff, and I've been looking at how to do that. So Radix seems to be getting updated. Yeah, so one of our recommendations for a core theme was to use Radix, but Radix hasn't had an official release on backedupcms.org. It's got a couple of bugs that just, incomplete port stuff, some stuff that just works a little differently in Drupal than it does in Backdrop.
And I have not really enjoyed using it when I built the site out of it, so I'd prefer something simpler because it's kind of very heavyweight and has a lot of dependencies.
I often tend to rip a lot of stuff out of Radix when I start to make it a little simpler, and I think that it would be good that whatever we put in core needs to be lightweight. That was one of our requirements. What that means to me is it needs to do less. I think less is more in terms of putting code in core that we're going to have to maintain. So I'm totally fine with that general approach, using something kind of bootstrappy. But I would love to see less code involved. And I think leaving the Radix as a project in its current state is also valid, so people can have what it does now. It's very similar to what it did in Drupal 7. I think people will like that.
Yep. The other thing I was thinking, if we have both sort of a very simple base theme and then a more complicated, flashy theme, we could actually sort of use those in the different install profiles. That maybe the minimum install profile would just install the super simple basic base theme, and the standard install profile would actually install the flashy one by default. So that just seems like a good sort of way to tie it together.
Yeah, I think that sounds fine. If we're going to put, I'm a little worried about putting two themes in core. I would almost rather say for 1.4, maybe we should just focus on getting the simple base theme in and think about what a sub-theme might work like, and then we would have the ability to add that later, where it's okay, we did something super minimal, but that's, maybe not going to cut it. So let's put in something that extends that and does what we want. And if we're thinking about that sub-theme as we're writing the base theme, we might be able to get that to make a little more sense too. But yeah, I do like the idea of something super lightweight and then something a lot flashier.
Are we gonna eat our own dog food and move the backdropcms.org site over to the new theme?
We could. I mean, I guess it depends on. We'll probably need to do some kind of rebranding, rethinking of that site anyway at some point. It would be fun to do that using, either using. I don't know that we should use the default out of the box front end theme because that was kind of an issue when Drupal looked like Drupal.org. But we could definitely use it as a base theme and then do whatever we wanted on top of it. That could be kind of fun. Then it would just be similar in all of the right ways, but maybe not identical. Yeah. I have been updating backdropcms.org to the latest version of Backdrop every time we get a new version. Sometimes before we get a new version, I'm I really want this feature. I'm just going to do it. I think over time, as we start getting users and stuff happening over there, I'm going to have to start being a lot more careful with backdropcms.org. But so far, it's been a really good test case of okay, we've got 1.3 up right before we cut the 1.3 tag, so it's 1.2 head, but whatever. But yeah, it's been so far just a significant amount of improvement each time. I haven't horribly broken anything yet, so hopefully I'll not break it too badly before I start being more careful. All right. Let's see. Sprints. After today's meeting, we will have a little sprint in GitHub and the issue queue. I've actually noticed there's been a lot more activity all week long than there has been on Thursdays, so I would just encourage people to work whenever you can. We appreciate all of the hours anyone can put in, regardless of what days they are on. We chat in the GitHub issue queue most commonly. We also have this Gitter chat, which has been super handy. I actually think I prefer it to IRC. We have an IRC channel for those of you who are old school and love IRC. And we also have a Reddit that hasn't been getting that much activity lately. We have been getting a louder and louder clamor for a place for people who are not super technical to be able to ask questions and discuss ideas and how to solve problems in Backdrop. I am slowly coming around to the idea that maybe we should just throw up a forum on our website. I think we've had a couple of people who have volunteered to actually keep an eye on the forum, to answer questions, to bring in other people when they need to be brought in. So I think that that's something that maybe we should put on our agenda for adding to the main website, especially as new people are trying to use Backdrop and they're getting stuck and they don't know where to go for help. So that's definitely something we can continue to think about. Upcoming events. So very soon, 2 weeks is Sand Camp, the San Diego Drupal Camp, where we're going to be doing our first ever full day long Backdrop training. The camp doesn't have a great attendance right now, so neither does our training class. But if you want to go to San Diego in February, if you're coming from someplace cold and snowy, and you want to go get some sun and sand, it's going to be great. We're going to do a training that'll include a little bit of design training. Darius is going to be there to do a section on design. We're going to be doing building a site in Backdrop. Nate will come in for a little bit at the end and talk about porting a module. So we'll try and cover all bases, specifically around the differences between Backdrop and Drupal. So if you have a Drupal site and want to figure out how to do things in Backdrop, we'll be able to highlight the things that you need to know most in that class. So that should be really fun. I was thinking about sending a newsletter since we didn't send one for 1.3. We could send one now that included information about 1.3 and then a little like, come learn Backdrop. I don't know. We'll see. Try and get it out by tomorrow. I don't know what module Nate's going to port in the class. I don't think it'll be migrate module. We'll try it. We'll probably ask the audience, like, does anyone have a favorite module that's, you know, and then we'll look at it and say, no, that's not, we can't port Drupal Commerce in this class, but maybe we'll pick something else. I don't know. We'll see. Darius and I are going to meet and go over a plan for what we want to talk about for the first half of the day, and then we'll probably see what comes from that talk, and if there's a module that fits in nicely that maybe something we've been using that day or something, we'll throw that at 8, see if that works. Also, a couple other upcoming Drupal camps. We have Drupal Camp Utah, which is March 4th through 5th. Mid-Camp, which is in Chicago, in March 19th through 20th. And CiviCon, which is the CiviCRM conference, is going to be in Denver this year. We don't have an official date yet, but it will be May or June. And we're planning on doing a couple of sessions there. We were thinking about doing one on open source collaboration between projects, which could be fun, and another one that hopefully will have Backdrop running on Civi by then, and we'll be able to do a little case study, like less technical, more, yay, we're using this thing. We're not using it right now, but hopefully we'll be using it soon. That'll be fun. Books, Migrating from Drupal to Backdrop, is now available both on Apress from their website and from Amazon.com. I was so excited I ordered a copy. I haven't read it all yet, but it looks really great. He's got all of the different sections you need to know, like specifically section on layouts and stuff like that too. So, and it's not a lot of words, right? Like, have you guys seen the Drupal Pro development book for Drupal 7? It's like this fat, and you're like, oh my god, I'm never going to be able to read it all. But this seems like I could totally read this in a week or so. You read the whole thing, highlight it, put a little dog ears in the corners, whatever you guys do when you're reading books. So I'm really excited to have it and to support Todd. He's also working on another book for Backdrop right now, which is a basic Backdrop book, which will be probably more extensive. But that should be out by the second quarter of 2016. All right, that is the end of our official schedule, and I somehow managed to make it all the way through the agenda all by myself, which is good. Does anyone have anything, questions, comments, anything we should talk about today in particular?
Oh, I was going to bring up, what were we talking about? There was an issue in the issue queue where someone was mentioning something, and it was like a UX issue, but then it was more of like a security issue. So I was wondering if we should have like a security bracket thing for security issues, where like just potential security problems, because I feel like those should be independently highlighted as something that we should keep an eye on.
So we have a general process, like if there's actually a security issue, we don't want it to be...
Not like a security, like exploitative issue, but more of just a general best practices security. I don't know. Yeah, but
yeah.
Okay.
So we also, this is something we should talk about too, is we contacted GitHub about how open source projects are supposed to handle community related security issues, because they give you free public repositories but no private repositories, and then they're like, oh well, we'll give you a private repository. So they gave us one. So we now have a private repository for dealing with security issues for Backdrop, which is good. They also just gave us a bunch of other private repositories where we're like, we don't have stuff to do for that. But it could be, like we were thinking about, that might be a good place to handle like other types of communication that we need to have documented. Like if we need to have like a PMC queue or something where we can escalate an issue from a public queue into a private queue and talk about it and figure it out and then post a public response, we can do that. It hasn't been necessary yet, but we thought we've got all these repositories, we should start using them for something other than security issues. But I think you're right. I think like if there is an issue that has a security implication, it will be good to tag it. I'm just worried about training people to tag issues as security issues, because then if there is a security issue that shouldn't be public, they might think that's the way to handle it rather than reporting it.
Okay, maybe we can come up with a different term. I found the issue we're talking about was the including honeypot. So
Okay.
It was more of like, maybe not security, but anti-spam, and yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't UX. It was more like, let's keep people from
Keep people safe.
from exploiting the site and posting a bunch of content. So I'm not sure what a better word for that is than security.
Yeah, I agree. It would be good to have like a whole category of like super helpful things. I don't know what to call them. But yeah, I agree. It's just some way to be like, this is a feature that everybody will benefit from, whether they understand it or not, or know to look for it or not. And the more we can help people in those areas, the better. I don't know. I think naming things is hard.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's easy to name things.
You are good at naming things. That's why you're here. We need that. Okay. Does anyone else have anything else they want to throw out there? Not yet. Okay. Well, then let's take this to the issue queue. I will see all you guys in Gitter or elsewhere. Thanks for joining the meeting today. Nate will be back next week. And yeah, go forth and prosper, whatever you say. Bye, everyone.